going to be having an unfiltered, no BS discussion to show you the true diversity that exists in beauty around the world. Take full control of your quest for your own beauty. All right, welcome back to Uncensored Beauty. In today's episode, I'm going to be delving into why it is that society seems to love hating on plastic surgery. You know, I think ultimately in some ways it makes sense why people have so many opinions about plastic surgery. The reality is it is pretty gruesome when you think about it, and a lot of it is just going through all these things just for beauty. So if you're somebody who's not really interested in plastic surgery, the whole principle of it may seem pretty crazy to you that somebody's willing to go get cut just to look a certain way. I think a lot of it too has to do with the fact that people just generally love hating transformations. That's also why generally on social media, before and after transformations are going to be some of the most clickbaity things you'll see. And this isn't even just with plastic surgery. It's the reason why makeup artists are so popular on Instagram and social media and TikTok, etc. It's because when you're taking something and changing the way that it looks, there's something very captivating about that to the human mind. You even see this not just from human beauty, but you see this when it comes to people remodeling their houses. Like some of the most popular shows on TV are things that deal with transformation. And ultimately, plastic surgery, when it comes to the human form, is going to be some of the most drastic ways in which you can achieve a transformation. And like I said, the pain of going through plastic surgery is sometimes unfathomable to people who wouldn't consider it for themselves. So they just love judging people for it, frankly. You know, I think it makes sense to have a love-hate relationship with plastic surgery because I myself, as a plastic surgeon, also have the same love-hate component in relationship with it. What I love about plastic surgery is how much it can change somebody, how much it can really flip the script on how you view yourself. And frankly, just to be clear, what I'm talking about is cosmetic plastic surgery. I think something people lose sight of is the term plastic surgery is oftentimes just automatically lumped in with beauty. That's not the case. Plastic surgery has a lot of pieces to it, and the cosmetic aspect is just one of it. There's both cosmetic, there's also reconstructive. The difference is cosmetic surgery is taking somebody who's at a baseline that is considered relatively normal and then using surgery to enhance their look. Reconstructive is usually when someone has lost something, whether it's from trauma or cancer or some other disease or issue, and as the plastic surgeon, we're trying to restore what they have lost. Now, why people hate plastic surgery, I think has a lot to do with the shady practices, frankly, that happen in plastic surgery often. We look at these very crazy results that people get, these insane transformations that people undergo, and oftentimes those are the ones that are publicized the most on social media and in general media. I think this kind of goes back to a discussion we've had in a prior episode where you look at people who change and transform into something unrecognizable because of overdone surgery, and then all of a sudden you end up creating a blanket statement being like, oh, so-and-so looks bad, so therefore all plastic surgery is bad. That's not how you should be looking at it, though. What you should be looking at on an individual basis is what exactly did this person do to get them to this place. It's not a general demonization of plastic surgery that is the actual solution to addressing this problem at the end of the day. I think plastic surgery in general has been a very modern phenomenon. Plastic surgery in some ways has been around for thousands of years. I mean, initially plastic surgery originated over 2,000 or 3,000 years ago with a doctor named Sushruta, who was in India, and he started using the human body to reconstruct things that had been lost. And if you look up some of the photos from this individual, there's publications showing that he was doing things such as moving tissues to recreate noses, using people's forearms to create the nose, fix their faces, etc. And this was thousands of years ago. Now when we look at it, plastic surgery has increased so much in its breadth of what it does, and specifically in cosmetic surgery, it has been such a hot topic in the press because of this controversial aspect it has to it. And that's why, people like Dr. Nassif, Dr. Dubrow, Dr. 90210, they're all these recognizable names in the industry because what they have done is they have created different TV shows and media personalities that not only highlight what they do as plastic surgeons, but really also highlight that general quest and thirst for beauty that so many people have and what they'll actually undergo to get there. Another family, I guess I would say, that has really impacted how people view cosmetic surgery in the United States are going to be the Kardashians, to the point where I actually call this the Kardashian effect. I have discussed before where if you look at the aesthetic of women's bodies in the late 90s and the early 2000s, the body type that was the most popular was considered to be, in some ways people would call it like cocaine chic, where it was that extremely skinny body, right? So that's where you saw people like Cameron Diaz and Gisele Bündchen and Heidi Klum, these beautiful, tall Caucasian women who were very thin, long legs, not much curvature to them, but a very sleek look to them. And it wasn't until the late 2000s when Kim Kardashian kind of jumped onto the scene where suddenly people started talking not as much about that, super skinny aesthetic, but it was her butt that really became the topic of conversation. And before that was even J-Lo. I mean, people forget that up until around the Kardashian era, J-Lo was considered to have a quote-unquote massive butt for a celebrity. What's funny now is if you go back and look at a picture of J-Lo from like 2002 and her buttocks, you will actually look at that and say that's a very conservative butt when you compare it to that of Khloe or Kim Kardashian's. So I think that's what's interesting to see is how the Kardashians have not only changed the way people perceive beauty, but it's also why they get so much hate for their aesthetic. Because by changing the beauty aesthetic that was standardized for women, they automatically invited controversy and commentary. And like I said, people love to hate the way you look. And that's just how it is. And social media really brings that out in people. What the Kardashians did, though, that was interesting is they took that hate and they capitalized on it. As much as for every 5 people that hate the Kardashians, there's another 5 who love them. And being in Los Angeles, I can personally tell you, there are countless women who come to plastic surgeons' offices literally seeking out the Kardashian-style body, whether it's Kim Kardashian's facial shape, whether it's her butt shape, whether it's the narrowness of her waist, the shape of her breasts, the size of her arms. These people have ultimately completely changed the conversation around beauty, where the idea of modifying yourself is almost a necessity in order to achieve what they have, because frankly, they wouldn't have been able to achieve these body standards without some form of modification themselves. And in some ways, yes, they have been transparent about having certain things done, in my opinion, not transparent enough, because there are certain things I do feel that they do mislead people at times on. But I think it's important to understand that there's nothing wrong with wanting that aesthetic, but it's also important to understand that it takes a lot of money, time, and effort to get there. Where I do think the hate, I don't think hate is ever really justified, but where the frustration among people in the general public is justified is when you have celebrities out there who, they come and they look drastically different on the red carpet compared to 1 year ago, and then their answer when you ask them what have you done to themselves is they say, oh, I drink 40 ounces of water every day, and that's what makes me look this way. I'm going to call BS on that. That's not what happens. I drink 120 ounces of water a day, and I'm going to tell you, I don't look that different 1 year ago compared to now just because I'm hydrated. Now, there are important things that come with it as far as when you're hydrating. Sure, it helps your skin. When you're eating well, it helps the way you look. It's going to prevent you from, gaining unnecessary weight, etc. But at the end of the day, beauty is a multimodal concept. You need all these pieces, and plastic surgery is an important part of it. Now, if you're not interested in plastic surgery, again, that's fine. But let's remember, if you want to achieve a certain beauty standard and it's totally different than the body you were given, you're going to need plastic surgery to get there. But that's why also people love to hate it, because there is a component of plastic surgery that kind of feels like, I think to some people it feels like the person is cheating. I'm always very open about the fact that I've had my nose done. And a lot of times people are surprised because I will just kind of offer that up without being prompted. And I'll just be like, oh yeah, I've had my nose done. And people are shocked to find out that I'm just willing to tell them, because I think there's just this idea that's, like I said, there's this idea that somehow it's cheating. You know, if I'm considered good looking now, if I had plastic surgery, that means I cheated. That's not true. At the end of the day, plastic surgery is not going to revolutionarily change the way your entire body is structured, but it's designed to subtly enhance the parts of your body that you already have and turn them into something elevated and something that fits your aesthetic. You know, I think one way in which we can kind of combat this hate of plastic surgery is understanding why people hate it, and also from celebrities being more transparent about it. And not just celebrities. If you, who is watching this or listening to this, wherever you are, if you've had a procedure done, I encourage you, don't be ashamed of having had that procedure done. If you're gonna get a facelift and you look amazing afterwards and somebody says, what have you done? Maybe consider telling them, because at the end of the day, the only way we can destigmatize plastic surgery is by being open and honest about it. You know, I think there's this fear, again, that like you're gonna be seen as somebody who has something they don't deserve. But the reality is if you've had plastic surgery, you went through all the recovery, you paid with your hard-earned money to get what you wanted. There's no difference between getting a facelift at the end of the day than there is of buying expensive skincare products, putting eyeliner around your eyes to make them look bigger, wearing colored contacts, getting your hair done, or whatever else there is that constitutes you and your personal beauty routine. So I think another thing that we also have to consider is what are the standards that we're pushing on people. One thing that frustrates me more than anything in the world is when I see celebrities or influencers who post photos that I can tell are very clearly photoshopped. And that's your right. You can Photoshop whatever you want and post it. But if you post that photo of yourself with this unnaturally skinny waist, this super round butt with not a single bit of cellulite, or your face is totally unblemished, and you're posting that saying, I woke up like this, and you have 2 million followers, well, guess what? 1 million of those followers are probably young girls who are looking up to you, and for you to tell them that this look you have is completely because you've been blessed by the hand of whatever God you believe in, that is completely misleading and completely inappropriate, because at the end of the day, you're misleading these people who trust you to tell them what it is that helps make you look and feel more beautiful. Like I said, nothing wrong with photoshopping, but be honest about it. And at the end of the day, to me, it's not plastic surgery that's the devil here. It's alteration through digital means that are played off as natural. That is the most damaging thing you could possibly do, because it's telling people that here's the beauty standard I abide by, and I really had to do nothing to get there. And that's the whole BS behind this idea of effortless perfection, being perfect but having done nothing to achieve it. And I think you see this on social media with things like the rise of the trad wives and people who just make their lives look so beautiful and so amazing. But the reality is no one's life is that beautiful and that amazing. Life is hard. Beauty is hard. Dealing with your own self-confidence is hard. So these things need to be brought out more into the light, and people need to understand that this is a key component of being a human being. We're always going to be insecure about certain things. We're not going to feel certain of everything we do. We're not going to love every outfit that we put on. But at the end of the day, if we're just honest with people about it, that's going to go a long way in helping to smash through these unrealistic, unachievable beauty standards that somehow are suddenly being blamed on plastic surgeons for pushing this out. Like I've said before, plastic surgeons are not setting beauty standards. Plastic surgeons are addressing the beauty standards that have been created by society and therefore treating a symptom. You don't go after a disease by just treating the symptom. You have to go at it by dealing with what is at its core, ultimately. So, to round out today's segment, I would just say plastic surgeons are not the enemy. Sure, some plastic surgeons can definitely do better by not pushing certain beauty standards out there and maybe being a little bit more selective about what it is they decide to perform on people. But at the end of the day, if you are concerned about what plastic surgery is doing to society, don't hold a mirror up to the plastic surgeon, hold a mirror up to society itself. So with that said, we're going to transition over to our Glam Gas segment, where we'll be exploring some beauty news and crazy stories from around the world. So for today's Glam Gas, we're going to be looking at skincare and a certain way in which in history we have used a certain very toxic substance just to get that beautiful porcelain, shiny white skin that so many cultures look up to. And what this toxic substance is arsenic. Yes, you heard that right. Arsenic, the traditional poison in every Bond movie and every movie you've seen, was actually used for cosmetic purposes, even pretty close to the modern era. What people used to do is people used to take arsenic in the form of wafers, and this was actually advertised. What they would do is they would take one of these wafers every day, put it in their mouth, let it dissolve or chew it or whatever, and what that arsenic would do over time, as they noticed, was it would start kind of clearing up the skin. It would make you look kind of sheet white, porcelain look, which again is the reason that that's kind of seen as a status symbol oftentimes in cultures, which many people don't know, is because white skin was considered a sign that you were not working out in the fields, or you were not part of the proletariat, you were more part of the bourgeoisie because you had the luxury of staying out of the sun. Now the problem with taking arsenic, as you can imagine, is that sure, it might create a little whitish skin for a little bit, but the toxic effects on the rest of your body were catastrophic and even deadly. I mean, this can lead to organ failure, it can lead to ulcerations in the skin, and what's even crazier is that when people would start experiencing these very negative side effects, they would stop taking the arsenic wafers, and your body would actually undergo arsenic withdrawal. And your skin, as a result, would end up looking worse and worse because you'd start developing things like ulcers, you'd break out in blemishes, and you would just get this really dull tone throughout your skin because it was the poison that was really preventing any of this from happening. And although your organs are doing better on the inside, now all of a sudden on the outside you look worse. So this led to a very vicious cycle, and oftentimes it would lead to women taking these substances, frankly, until the arsenic killed them. So if there's one lesson to be learned, I know there are toxic substances out there that in some ways can have an impact on your beauty and can cause you to look a certain way. I mean, I think we see this nowadays with things like, steroid use for skin to try and whiten it, where people go through steroid withdrawals. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you look on TikTok at chronic steroid use withdrawal videos to see what these people go through. But the reality is, keep it pretty simple with your skincare. The most important thing you can do, stay out of the sun, use SPF, moisturize, eat healthy, hydrate, and please, for God's sakes, don't put arsenic in your body just to have cleaner skin. So with that said, this has been today's episode of Beauty Uncensored. I'm Dr. Sean. If you enjoyed this segment, please go ahead and smash the subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time.